Hi, it's Gwen.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to start shortly. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Good prayer as plain as a wart on a nose. What if he does decide not to take it? What would you do about it? Cowboy, I like you. I owe you something. So you shut up or you're going to collect on it right now. You don't have to really
Somebody's listening to some classic radio mystery going on there.
Yeah. Hi, Chris. All right. All right.
I have just so FYI, I have a PDF that I can share on screen.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Let me make you a co-host here,
All right.
so you can do that.
Cool.
it just occurred to me that I never sent out an agenda. My bad. Sorry. um, I'm looking forward to the day when I can step down um, as president. I have other hats that I'm wearing in the organization. I will continue to wear those, but I'm looking forward. uh, so, uh, in a moment, we're going to have a roll call to see what member organizations are present. Um, we will forego the minutes of the last um, executive meeting. We didn't have a quorum. It was basically myself and the treasurer. Um, one of the vice presidents tuned in a few minutes after we had basically adjourned at 25 after 7. Um, Last month, we had we we had a presentation from the Department of Insurance, Securities, and Banking. Yeah, DISB, Insurance, Securities, and Banking. Which talked what he talked about mainly was uh,
Fraud.
yes, fraud and scams, uh, particularly related to the COVID pandemic. Yeah. So let me find the membership listing, and we'll have our um, roll call following a moment of silence, silent reflection. Um, Thank you. Um, I was going to suggest some things that we could think about, but I'm just happy that we're all here. Um, Let me find the roll. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna call the names of the current paid member organizations. If you don't hear your organization's name, um, please inform me after the roll call so I can acknowledge you, um, acknowledge your organization's presence. Uh, in fact, I need to print this. Is what I need to do. Oh, So again, welcome everyone to the May 26, 2021 meeting of the DC Federation of Civic Associations. Roll call. Petworth, Brightwood, Woodridge, Shepherd Park, Langston,
Present.
Fort Lincoln,
Present.
Northeast Boundary, I thought I saw Dr. Gaffney. Yeah. You should be able to unmute yourselves.
Okay, I just did.
Okay, thank you. Fairlawn, present. DuPont Circle, Bloomingdale.
Bloomingdale is here.
Yes, thank you, Robert. North Michigan Park, Friends of Kingman Park.
Here.
Yes, thank you. Queens Chapel, Cleveland Park, Benning Ridge.
Present.
Are there any member associations that I failed to call?
Yes, sir. Colorama.
Galorama. Any others?
Brightwood is here.
Brightwood. Thank you. Anyone else? Member associations that I failed to mention. All right, thank you very much. With 9 member associations present, we do have a quorum. The quorum requirement is 7. Thank you very much. And let's see. Let me clear my screen. If there are no objections, I'm going to forego the correspondence, the membership report, as well as the treasurer's report. And we're going to get right into our speaker of the evening. Are there any objections?
No.
No objection, Mr. President. No.
Hearing none, we will move on to our speaker for this evening, Mr. Chris Otten of the I'm sorry, Chris. I don't have my paper in front of me. It's help me out, Chris.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, so many hats, including
Yeah.
this one right here. But DC for Reasonable Development.
Yes.
And also member of the steering committee of the DC Grassroots Planning Coalition.
Hat.
I got my hat on. Should I take it off?
No, I said just look at Chris' hat. He has a hat on tonight.
And I'm a former ANC commissioner in Adams Morgan. Yeah, I've been helping communities throughout the city. It's really an honor to be here. Granlund, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
You know, I've been in the city for only 21 years now, and I've watched what we've all seen unfold, certainly in the last 15 years. And so I've been invited to talk about the DC Comprehensive Plan, which is supposed to guide how things are unfolding in the city. And as you might know, the mayor has Mayor Muriel Bowser has suggested amendments to the plan, 1,500 pages of amendments.
What?
Yes, and then those went through, we'll go into this. I have a presentation, but that was recently passed by the DC City Council as of May 18th. It's went through the second vote before the City Council. So what I'm hoping to do tonight is talk about kind of the things we won and the things we lost, and in the things that we lost, what do we do now? Because the things we lost are pretty big, and as well as the things we won are pretty big, but the things that will impact us right away will be the things that we lost. So let me just, should I roll into this? I'll just go into this right away, and then I'll start sharing my screen. But basically, as you all probably know, the DC Comprehensive Plan is a key legislative document that covers a range of topics, from economic development, housing, the environment, parks, community services, transportation, and more. The most recent version of the Comprehensive Plan was passed in 2006. It's a 20-year plan, so it's supposed to last till 2026. And there's been amendments along the way, such as in 2011, and then now this one. They're considering this an amendment cycle. However, the mayor has pretty much rewritten every policy and done significant changes to the planning maps, which the council has unfortunately adopted. But the amendment process, as it was, began in 2016 under the Office of Planning. And they threw the doors open and said, send us your changes to the plan. They didn't tell us how the plan was working or not. They didn't have any progress reports discussing, hey, this policy is really good, this one's not so good, maybe you can help us make amendments to it. They just threw the door open. And of course, most people don't know the technical jargon of zoning and planning. So most people did not engage on this process. We have what, 700,000 people in this city. The Office of Planning claims 10,000 people participated. We think far less. And you know, that's evidenced by the people who attended some of the ward level meetings. There was none of the documents were translated, so all of our limited English speaking communities didn't participate. There was just a very it's technical enough where most people won't engage unless really brought on board. A lot of community groups did participate. A lot of ANCs did participate. Whether they were listened to or not is a different story. But I want to share my screen to start the timeline from when, let me see if I can do this right, because here we go. Let's try this. Can you all see this timeline?
Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
I want to start the timeline from when the Office of Planning, after hearing from mostly developers, attorneys, and some ANCs and some civic groups, what they did after they got all that information. And so what they did was in October 2019, they sent a document of 1,500 pages of changes to the DC City Council. Actually, no, I'm sorry. They didn't send it to the council yet. October 2019, they just published it. They said, here we go. This is what we think, how the comp plan should change. And they asked the public to weigh in by mid-December during the holiday season. So literally 2 months, October, November, December. There was a lot of pushback at the time from ANCs and community groups asking for more time. And we compelled the mayor to extend the deadline from mid-December. For the public, it was till January 10th, and for the ANCs until Valentine's Day of 2020, just before the pandemic started. Many ANCs submitted resolutions, and there were questions about, hey, what about the progress reports, and what about the planning impact studies that are required by law? All of the ANC resolutions were responded to, except those who submitted resolutions that asked about these laws requiring planning impact studies. The Office of Planning did not respond to those. Anyway, so that was February 14th is when the deadline closed for public input. Then just 2 months later, April of 2020, OP took all that feedback and said, well, here we go. We've taken your input public, and now we're going to send this over to the DC City Council. So in April of 2020, it goes to the DC City Council, 1,500 pages of red lines. Later on, after a lot of pressure, a lot of emails, one of the things that's associated with this plan is called the future land use map. And that's really where the rubber hits the road for your communities. This is the map that basically determines how your community is going to develop and grow over the next, well, now just 5 years left in this plan. And we had to compel the director of the Office of Planning to divulge, to tell us, all these changes to the future land use map, to these planning maps, how much are we talking, how much development is this really mean? And he had finally admitted by email to me that it would unlock 200 million square feet of land and air rights to be able to be developed around the city, not available right now. So let's just put a little of that into context. Many of you might have heard the McMillan Park controversy. This is at North Cap and Michigan Avenue. That huge project there represents 2 million square feet of development. So this would be 100 McMillan Park projects is what they've unlocked in these plans and the planning maps. So that goes to the council. Now, between April and November, nobody knows really what's going on. But sometime, I guess, at the end of October, Councilmember Phil Mendelson announces that he's going to have a 2-day hearing on it in mid-November. So we had to get all the people together, and we did. There was 150 witnesses at this 2-day hearing, marathon hearing. Almost one of the longest hearings in council history. 15 hours. And out of those 150 witnesses, most people opposed what the mayor was proposing to the council to change in this comp plan. And it really did fall along racial lines. The people who were in support were young, single, white people. I hate to say it like that, but that's just how it was. The people who were concerned or opposed were largely people of color, Black people largely, who are in communities that are under threat. So that happens in mid-November. Between mid-November, those hearings, and mid-April of this year, we hear nothing. We don't hear anything from Phil Mendelson. We don't see how our input had any effect on the changes. There's no news in any newsletters. There's nothing. And then all of a sudden, Phil in early April says, we're going to announce our changes. We're going to announce our change, the council's changes to the mayor's changes to the plan, if that makes sense. So on Thursday, April 13th, 2021, just a month ago, council chair Phil Mendelson released his staff markup of the plan amendments. That is his changes to the Office of Planning's changes to the comp plan. Then quickly on Monday, April 17th, he releases a second version with more amendments, along with the committee report that outlined those marathon hearings that happened in November of 2020. And in that committee report is very interesting. And you can ask some ANC commissioners, the people, again, who brought up the law that governs changes to the comp plan were either neither mentioned in the committee report or completely that aspect of their testimony was edited out. There was no mention of people saying, hey, what about the law about planning impacts from all of these changes? Anyway, he got it. Phil Mendelson got it voted out of the committee of the whole, moving it to an official vote by the entire city council. And that's what happened this past month. May of 2021. On May 4th, the council voted unanimously, although there were two present, Alyssa Silverman and Janice Lewis George voted present. But otherwise, it was unanimous, his changes, Mendelson's changes to the plan. Then on May 18th, again, the council voted unanimously on the second vote for the comp plan changes. At these legislative meetings, both Mary Chey and Bran Nadeau, so Mary Chey is Ward 3, Bran Nadeau is Ward 1, introduced last minute major changes to the planning maps, unlocking even more density, unlocking even more development rights, again, without any community dialogue, without any impact planning. And it was kind of a shock to the people who live in these communities. I just wanted to give a sense of like how quickly this went through and kind of our role in it and why maybe a lot of people didn't participate. I mean, it's not a process that allows for a lot of back and forth or even understanding how, when you did participate, how your testimony had any effect. Kind of kept close to the chest by the council until they were ready to vote on it. So what I wanted to do was really just quickly go over the laws and regulations that govern the comprehensive plan, which we highlighted, both the ANC resolutions highlighted and people testified to at the marathon hearings in November. DC Code 1-306.04 says that when the mayor submits, the mayor shall basically give progress reports on this comp plan because it's such an important document. It's the central guiding document for the city about how we develop across all communities, across all issues, environment, transportation, housing, that we should have regular progress reports. Do you think those progress reports are on the record in this case at all? They don't exist. They were never done. We had to ask the council, can you demand that they do this? And the council would not do it. That's one of the laws, 1-306.04. So it's interesting. They're asking us to change the plan, but yet there's no progress reports to see how the plan is actually being used and done and successfully or not. So there's no context for the changes to the plan. I just want to make sure that's clear. And then there's very, very clear is 1-306.04. It says proposed amendments to the plan shall be accompanied by an environmental assessment of the proposed amendments. Interestingly enough, at the end of the legislation that was submitted to the council, there was this slapdash, quote unquote, environmental assessment without a date, without any acknowledgement who wrote it, without any agency associated with it. It's just a 5-page environmental assessment that isn't an environmental assessment. And I'll go into that later. But basically, these proposed amendments were supposed to come with how the changes in the maps and the policies were going to affect us, the community, environmentally. And that, by the way, the environmentally means more than just air and water. It means the people and the health and well-being of the people. So flowing from those statutes, those codes, are DC municipal regulations that govern the comp plan. And if you look at these regulations, it's very interesting. 10A DCMR 2515.1 says, you know, when you're proposing changes to the comp plan, you know, you got to show, you know, what's the math involved that is compelling you to make those changes, right? And then 2515.3 says, here's some of the information that will be required when an amendment is proposed, how the issue is addressed or not currently in the plan, and what's the public need for it. Imagine that. You have to show the need for the change. What are the anticipated impacts of the change on the geographic area? Seems like basic planning common sense. Demonstration that the change would be in conformity with the current plan, and then provide any data, research, reasoning that supports those amendments. And then finally, a demonstration of public support, such as at the ANC or community groups, civic groups. Following on, this is more acute when it finally gets to the council for review and adoption. If it says, and I italicized it here, any new or significantly modified amendment that is generated during the hearings at the council would be required to be accompanied by planning analysis and recommendation prior to taking final action. So the last minute Ward 1 and Ward 3 changes did not have any planning analysis. And it was literally like 11:59 that they brought, Brianne Nadeau and Mary Chey brought some major changes to the comp plan maps. Now, these regs and law, by the way, are backed up by basic protocols in the American Institute of Certified Planners Code of Ethics. And I put this link here. If you click through this, if you were to find this AICP Code of Ethics, you can Google it. You'll see it talks about making sure the public is involved in these major decisions of changing their communities, making sure you look at impacts, the interrelated impacts by these changes. So the law follows basic planning principles. Now, I want to get into what happened between when Chair Mendelson released his changes to the mayor's changes and then the vote. One of the things that we've been successful in doing in the city, and it has a lot to do with the BLM, Black Lives Matter protest, and to Mr. Floyd's murder, was a huge movement around the nation about racial equity, both around police issues, but also around general legislation and policies in major cities. And so the council did form a racial equity agency. It's called the DC Council on Racial Equity. And their job is to evaluate any new legislation that might be coming up to be passed by the council. And if you look on their website, they've already done 5 or 6 reports based on some of the legislation. And we pushed hard, even though they were a new agency coming on board, and the comp plan had been being discussed for a while before their creation. We pushed really hard that CORE, DC Council on Racial Equity, look at this comp plan legislation before it's passed. And they put out a report that was, we were surprised about how damning it was of the comp plan. I mean, and I have some of the highlights here. The report dated April 19th, 2021. It says the comprehensive plan as introduced fails to address racism. I can't see, hold on. You can see it here. I mean, it basically is condemning the situation here. Can I shrink this down? Yes, okay. So it basically says, fails to address racism. Come on, computer. An ongoing public health crisis in the district. It appears that racial equity was neither a guiding principle and prep of the comp plan, nor was it an explicit goal of the plan's policies. These process failures laid the groundwork for deficiencies in policies, proposals, and they're ahistorical solutions and concerningly weak or vague. Some other points. If the district's goal is to end racial inequities, CORE believes the district should set guidance to prevent and eliminate displacement rather than minimize it, right? Displacement is a big issue. As introduced, the comp plan does not build on the on the goals laid out in the framework element to build capacity of the most marginalized communities to fully and substantially participate in decision-making processes. And then it goes on. It goes on. I have a portion of it here you can see on your screens. This is it, the core racial equity impact assessment for Bill 240001. It's done by Brian McClure, the director, and his staff, dated April 19th. And you can see this online. And it's got all those quotes that I just laid out in it. And it's pretty powerful. It relies on a lot of data. It's a good sign that we have this type of agency now that can look at these things. Now, what does that mean, though, in reality, since the council passed it anyway, right? Well, they don't have any teeth. They can't stop the council from passing something that's going to perpetuate the status quo, displacement, and racial inequities, even though it admits that. So it's a problem for us because it falls now back on the people. It's a great agency to have because it will do the analysis like this and show us, hey, this legislation's not so good. But unless our elected officials listen to it and actually really do something about it, it's really just kind of a soundbite. I mean, here we go. I grabbed a few more points. Despite the plan's commitment to eliminating racial inequities, the document before us still perpetuates the status quo. We know what the status quo has been. 40,000 Black folks displaced from the city since 2000. That was only between 2000 and 2010. The census numbers are still to come out on the racial breakdown of displacement between 2010 and 2020. Another important point in that core report is it weighs in on the laws, because we showed them the laws governing the comp plan about progress reports and this environmental assessment. And it unequivocally says they didn't do it. The council has not had public hearings on progress reports and has not submitted findings. And then on the environmental assessment, it says is incomplete, non-exhaustive. The mayor is required to submit an environmental assessment. However, the 5-page assessment does not provide any thorough assessment, evaluation, analysis data, project-based or critical analysis. I mean, it's pretty clear what its posture is, this agency on racial equity. Interestingly enough, along the way, ANC resolutions were also submitted about these laws, about progress reports and environmental impact assessments. They submitted them, for example, my ANC, ANC 4D, ANC 8C, among others. And when you look at the responses, the agencies like the Office of Planning just completely ignore the questions about the law. Again, that we reviewed earlier. Here's an example. This is ANC 4D. They said, I mean, they cite all the laws here, kind of discussing what the plan's about, and they highlight the comp plan law and regulations provide continuous community input and progress reports, and they highlight the laws there. They talk about the displacement of Black and brown and low-income communities, like in Navy Yard and Southwest. And they conclude, there's a lot of whereases here, but basically what are they asking the Office of Planning to do is, let's get to the therefore it be resolved, ANC 4D urges the Commission's great weight in that the Office of Planning demonstrate how they, did the environmental assessment and how, and to delay the vote until those assessments are done. So that was ANC 40. I wanted to show an actual ANC resolution. I'm going to stop there for questions, and then I want to go into what do we do now, which is up on your screen is potentially a lawsuit. I mean, not potentially, there's one that's been filed, but how to join it and how to be part of it. But let's just stop right now and answer questions about the comp plan, the process, and anything about how this may affect your community.
Is the 5-page non-environmental assessment, is that available, publicly available?
It is, yeah.
Right.
It's part of the LIMS legislation. It's the last 5 pages of the documents the mayor sent to the city council.
So how could they accept that if it didn't have a licensed environmental company's name on it?
Well, because the way you accept things, apparently to Phil Mendelson and the council, is to ignore that it wasn't done or omit it, right? So again, going back to the committee report on the comp plan and the 150 witnesses and the 15 hours of testimony that included questions like that, Ms. Honeycutt, is that like you omit that from even that it was even raised. The committee, Phil Mendelson's committee report on the comp plan does not mention these laws at all and how they were raised by the people and how people did question going on here. The committee report does not mention it.
So it's the lawsuit that you all doing going to get an, first of all, did the city council approve this?
Yes, last Tuesday, they had their second vote.
Okay, so the lawsuit that you all are putting forth, are you getting an injunction against them to not to go forward until you go to court?
We are seeking an injunction. We filed our complaint, and what we want to do, part of what tonight was about, was to invite people to join this complaint because we want to build it up. We want to, it's right now we have residents from 6 out of the 8 wards. We would like more residents involved. We want residents who are particularly impacted by the changes in the maps, which allow for 200 million square feet of extra development in the city, because that's really going to be what really impacts. So, and I was going to go into how you can figure out if your community is affected on the maps. I could show you where that is, but I was going to do that next. But basically, yeah, but basically, like, for the communities who are impacted, we need to get the word out. Hey, join the case, and then so we can build kind of a citywide. There's 12 people on the case right now. I'd like to have more. I'd like to. I mean, this is partly what we're trying to do tonight, is let people know we're not going to just back down from this. We want real planning in the city. We want people's lives and communities considered when they do these major changes, and so far we haven't seen that happen. And so there are ways to do this where you can look on a map and say, oh, holy cow, this is going to affect me, or it's going to affect my neighbors up the block. And then to start talking and reaching out to folks to get involved.
Any other questions for Chris before we move on?
Well, I thought he was gonna bring up a map and show some section that's impacted.
Yeah, he wanted to take some questions before he got there, though.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. I don't have any more questions until I see the map.
Any other questions? All right. So then what I'll do is I'll share this again and pull up this map. If I can. Pull up the map. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm going to share this now. Can you all see this map?
Uh-huh.
Yes, yes.
Okay, you can see this is
Yes.
comprehensive plan, future land use map. Okay, I'm gonna zoom out a little bit. Now, for whatever reason, when I'm sharing it, the computer is a little slower, so just bear with me. But there's our fair city. All right. So this is the mayor's office planning website, and to their credit, they did provide this map where you can you have this slider, right? That right now what we're looking at is the future land use map right now, and then when you drag the slider across, it shows what's been changed. Although I'm seeing a double. What's going on there? Yeah, this is that's so weird. I'm gonna have to refresh this page. Bear with me. And this is something that the city really should have done for every community group and every ANC, is show you exactly what they're trying to change. But basically, when you do this slider, you can see kind of this is before, and then I'm going to slide it back across, and this is after. And this is just for this section of the city. But wherever you see those black lines, you can see what the changes are. Do you all see that? I'm going to do it again.
Well,
Walk us slowly through it, and let us know that particular section and what have you.
Okay, this is, again, I'm zoomed out a bit. I just kind of wanted to generally show you the mechanics of it. I guess I should put the this web page in the chat as well, so you can actually click on it yourself. Where's the chat? Okay, let me put here. I don't know how to. All right, I don't have a chat option right now for whatever reason. But okay, so let me go back there. So basically, yeah, when you get to this page, which I'll put in the chat when I'm not sharing it anymore, you can bring this like slider. You see this slider, you just click your mouse and you drag it across. And as it's like, all right, so we're looking at downtown is in the center of the screen. You'll see there's parts, look north of downtown, parts of Ward 1, parts of Ward 6. They're changing. You see how like there's black lines around the properties that are changing. A lot in Southwest there. You can see down in Anacostia, it's changing. All along Banning Road. I mean, basically from Maryland Ave all up across Banning Road.
Can you pinpoint U Street and the fire station on that for point of reference? Do we know where that is? I don't know. It must be hard to do. I don't know.
I mean, we're pretty zoomed out, but let me zoom in. Let's see what happens if I zoom in a bit. It's a lot of RAM for the computer to.
so
It might be helpful to talk about the color, what the color designations are in terms of density and things like that and all as well too.
Sure. So I'm going to bring it back to where we are now. So the lighter colors are your lower density neighborhoods, right? So like your light yellows there are your low density residential areas, your row houses, your single family homes. And then as the color gets darker, then your density starts going up. So like you go from 1 or 2 story buildings to 4 and 5 story buildings and so on and so forth. So there's like a dark brown here. The dark brown is like your higher density residential, your 8 to 12 story buildings. The red down in the dark red down in the central corridor here of downtown DC, that's your high density commercial district, right? So working back on the commercial side, you'll see like a pink and a light pink. There's medium and the light pink is low. So it's sort of like density is the deeper the color, the higher the density. And the color shift is like your light yellows, brown, beiges and browns are your densities for your residential, and then your pinks to salmon to reds are your densities in commercial. I hope that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
There is a legend here that kind of lays that out a bit, that you can pull up, and it shows the colors. Do you all see that?
Mm-hmm.
And so again, I'm gonna, now that we're zoomed in, and this is downtown, so it's Ward, it's Ward 2 and 6, parts of 1 we see here. There's some parts of 4, there's parts of 7. I'm just gonna do the swipe, and you can see just kind of what happens here now in terms of them unlocking 200 million square feet of density. So your light beiges will go to your darker beiges, your anywhere you see these black lines, you'll start to see the shift in the colors. You see that, and then I mean right up there, right around that Ward 5, around this, up at the top of the screen, you see that's a big change there. That's that. I think
The
that's Irving
reservoir.
Street, right? Isn't that Irving?
The white thing is the reservoir.
Yeah. So,
Right.
but north of that on Irving Street,
Yeah.
it goes from a light blue. And what does light blue represent? That's your
What's
federal.
that light blue?
Federal.
Water?
No,
Where's that?
it's federal land. So that's your that's the Armed Forces retirement home,
Right.
right? So watch what happens when I scroll by that. You'll see it jump up to high density commercial striped with high density residential. So those are your downtown sized buildings they want to put up there on Irving Street, right? And then we'll keep going, and you see Rhode Island Avenue Metro gets a bump up there around that. And then you could start to see Benning Road here is starting to become, it's going from kind of a purple to so high density residential, high density commercial, striped, all along Benning, almost all the way over to Minnesota.
Well, wait a minute. Does that mean that the buildings that's there on Benning Road now, they're gonna take them over and
Well,
put
so
some?
what that means, Gwen, that's what we're talking about, right? So when we say planning impact studies are required and you didn't do them, why didn't you do them?
Right,
The
right.
reason why they didn't do them is because they would have to admit what you're alluding to, that this type of change is going to put significant pressure. It's already put speculation on those properties. So we know what's along Benning Road, right? Garden style apartments for low income folks, for working class families, for
So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
What did our ANC Blair, what did she have to say about this? We had a meeting last week. I didn't attend the meeting, so they might have talked about it last week. I don't know. But
Well, whatever she said about it, I don't know for sure. I don't know specific.
okay, I'll get in touch with her and find out, because this is awful.
It is.
It looks like they're going to add more, that the density would be severely increased.
Right.
And all right, so fine. If the council wants to do that, fine. But the law says you're supposed to understand the impacts. I mean, we've been driving the displacement train of development, lack of planning for the last 15 years. We've seen what all this development has done to our communities. There's some good things. There's a lot of bad things. The main bad thing is the displacement, and the land values have shot through the roof, where people on fixed incomes or people renting, or
Right.
people who are just in these buildings now that are going to be speculated on get forced out. And
Well, that is already happening over here. I live on 20th Street Northeast,
Mhm.
and these are 2-bedroom houses with no basement.
Mhm.
And the one next door to me just sold this month for $525. The one across the street well, it's renovated. It sold in 4 days for $619, and the one up the street is renovated. It has 3 bedrooms, but the specs say 2 bedrooms. It sold for $719,000.
Miss Honeycutt, are these 2-story buildings or 3-story?
These are 2-story buildings. They're 2-bedroom apartments with no base, 2-bedroom houses with no basement.
Oh,
And
100 block of 20th Street. Are you talking?
400 block, 400
Oh,
block.
okay, you're further down. Okay, I'm further up from, all right.
May I ask, were they forced to sell their homes, or
No,
they were
they're
just?
not. No, they're not forced to sell their homes. They putting their houses up for sale, and the house across the street sold in 4 days for $619,000.
And a 2-bedroom house.
They're selling over asking price. It's like a bidding war over here.
Yes.
And it's really scary because they built some new apartments on East Street, and those apartments are selling for $724,000. And it's scary. I couldn't figure out what was going on, but now that I'm looking at this map, these people are seeing what's coming, and the values are going to go up even higher, and they're getting in now. This is
I have
scary.
a question, Shanklin Brown, Benning Ridge. When you talk about Benning Road, is anything in that plan for the Fletcher Johnson project?
Well, let's just follow this along. It starts, you can see there's a big jump up at Benning in Minnesota. Do you see that?
Yeah, but this is a little ways past
yeah, keep going.
Minnesota.
Further up.
All right, I'm just gonna try to zoom in.
You got to cross East Capitol Street.
That's that's that blue spot.
Is that the blue square I'm looking at?
Yeah, it almost looks like a figure 8. Yeah, look at that.
Where is that?
So what does that mean? The blue spot?
Where? I'm sorry. Where is that?
In the lower right-hand corner of this current screen, you see something that looks kind of like a figure 8.
Oh, right here.
Yeah, that's Fletcher Johnson.
Yeah, so they did change. It looks like they're changing the map there. All along Benning here, you can see it's pretty major changes.
It's going to be a big project, 300 and something acres, I believe it is. I don't know if he's on the line yet, but he can tell you. That's the chair of the task force. So it's development that's going to be taking place soon.
Yeah.
So how are they eliminating or not including the community to give input?
We have passed the stage of community input.
Okay.
They've already voted.
Yeah, the community had ample time to do input for the Fletcher Johnson project. That's what I'm talking about. I don't know about the rest.
Yes,
and there were several RFPs and my RFP and all of that was done, which included the community.
Are you a developer?
Yeah, Keith is in the waiting room. Can you get him in, Prescott, so he can speak on that?
Yeah, I got a few people in here. Let's see.
Okay, let Keith in and he can tell you. I just wanted to know if the project was a part of that map. Keith, are you on?
It may take a second for him to get in.
Okay. Yeah, but the community had a lot of chances to have input and on that. And this is a project that had been spoken about since 2014.
I recall it now.
Let's try not to spend a lot of time on specific projects, because everybody needs to understand how to use these maps. There are numbers associated with these changes.
Yep.
What does that mean, Chris? Is there some kind of narrative associated with those numbers?
It's not a narrative. It's an internal Office of Planning identification system for how they change stuff.
Oh, okay.
So if you look at the legislation, and it just references, change 2035 is right there at Benning in Minnesota. I think, and to your point, more importantly than individual projects, because some projects might have a lot of community input, but north of Fletcher Johnson on Benning, I mean, there's also a lot of properties there you can see that are getting upzoned,
Yes.
right? And there's some here. I mean, it's a broader question of planning, really.
And Chris, people should understand, because it's being upzoned does not mean it is going to change, but it does mean that there is an opportunity for it to change by developers who are interested.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. I think that it's not like tomorrow they're going to start building stuff there, but one of the things why we're pushing for planning that should have happened already around these changes is that when these maps change like this, the community input process is weakened. Because if, let's say this map here at Benning Road is going to medium density from, I'm looking at 1984, the number 1984, this whole section around the metro.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going from a light beige and a light pink to a medium and a medium pink, right?
Right.
What that means is if a developer wants to build a building to medium pink and a medium beige level, in other words, like a 6-7 story building.
Right. It's already there.
Right. They don't have to go through like a community process now that has like community benefits agreement.
Right.
Does that mean like matter of right?
Yeah.
That's what it means.
Yeah. I mean, essentially there's one hearing. They would have to go to the zoning commission. It would be, it's called a map amendment hearing, where the zoning commission is being asked to change the underlying zone map, which is the specific properties and how they're zoned, and it would be mapped to meet what the designations show on this map that you see right now. So in other words, if it's right now, the buildings in that area are zoned, the underlying zoning is like, very low density commercial, low density.
Yeah, they're probably 2- and 3-story buildings.
Right.
Not much more.
If the developer wants to do something now, they would have to ask the community because there's a limit based on this map.
Right.
Right. And so they would say, hey, we want to do a medium density. Can we get your okay? And then the community can talk about planning impacts and get some benefits and more affordable housing or more transportation or agreement to jobs or whatever. But now that the council has upzoned it like this on this map, all the developer would have to do is go to the zoning commission and say, look, the map says medium density. Can you move us up? Can you bump us up to medium density for my property? And the zoning commission's hands are kind of tied. They would have to say, well, the future land use map says medium density. Yes, we have to give it to you. And so that's the problem here, is that then no planning is going to get done. There's not going to be a real community discussion. And it works around us. It works around every community where you see these changes, their ability to kind of weigh in.
Yeah, now, we have a hand raised. Keith Towery.
Yeah, thank you for the acknowledgement. And again, I do apologize for being late. It's a lot of stuff. Actually, there's a lot of things that we're doing around Fletcher Johnson today. A lot of meetings. So, my name is Keith Santari. I'm the current chair of the Fletcher Johnson Task Force. I do want to say, like, I don't disagree with the majority of the things that you're saying, because you're right. However, for the past 2 years, we've been actively engaged with the community to do these upzoning. This is something that the Marshall Heights community and the Benning Ridge community do want, and we do understand that that may take away some of our leverage in terms of working with the developer to get community benefit agreements during the PUD process. But we were very intentional in requesting these changes for the upzoning in that Fletcher Johnson area from the Benning Road Metro down to Fletcher Johnson. And we're also very intentional in talking to the council to have language in there that specify that they will continue the community engagement process, specifically with the Fletcher Johnson Task Force. So I just wanted to not to add to your comments. Like you're totally right with all those things, but this has been an intentional process for the Marshall Heights and Benning Ridge community for Fletcher Johnson.
Ms. Honeycutt, you have your hand up.
Yes, I want to see if you can send out the link to this map, so we can have this link and study this map, because I need to really understand this so I can take it to Friends of Kingman Park to tell them they need to join that lawsuit.
Check your recent emails from the Federation, because I know I've sent out some documents, and I think some links are in there. Let me see if I can find which specific emails it was. Reverend Thompson, do you have your hand up?
I do.
Okay.
I think one of the things that you can do, you can always go to op.dc.gov, which is the Office of Planning. And, if you follow the links for the comp plan, it'll take you to the maps. But
Yeah.
one of the things I also wanted to share with folks too, which is really important, besides the language in the comp plan, which, was a lot of pressure on to try to make it more accountable to the community, so that the language would ensure that people would not be displaced, and also that housing would be affordable. One of the things that happens, so that people understand this, is if the maps, if in the upzoning the developers are able to build, you want to be able to know that the properties are going to be affordable. And that's, what percentage of the area median income. How it's defined oftentimes is really not what's affordable. A lot of times they were saying that affordable is 60 to 80% of the area median income. But we know that to be really affordable, it probably needs to be more like in the 30 to 50% range. So, just keeping track of the affordability of development too. When the developers come in, if they get their own way and the language is not strong enough, then that allows them to rent out or to sell units for what's beyond most people's ability to pay. So we just need to be clear about that too.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, thank you, Chris, for all the work that you've done.
Yes. Yes.
I wanted to get the name of this plan again. I want to write it down. Can somebody give it to me?
The comprehensive plan?
Okay.
Or comp plan for short.
And you're looking at the future land use map.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I needed to know, the future land use map. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Digg, you have your hand up?
Yes, actually I do. So I wanted to ask Chris, I'm sorry, I forgot. Your last name is Otten, is that correct?
Yes.
So you are with what organization, and what can we now, since you've given us this very good information as to what we need to be taking action on, what action can we take?
Okay, so I'm with DC for Reasonable Development. We've been organizing on these issues, I don't know, maybe for 8 years. And basically we just offer, resources to try to get the word out and help people engage in zoning and planning issues, because it is, as you can see, technical in nature, and it's why it ducks a lot of people. But and I'm also with the DC Grassroots Planning Coalition, which was really taking on these changes as a coalition of people around the city, and we were having meetings once a month on the lead up to this plan and trying to get people involved and connected to the council and demand better. And we did win some things. That racial equity report stuff is huge, and it's because a lot of that language then got put into the plan. The problem is let's change, the council's perspective was let's change the plan now and deal with racial equity later. And we're not satisfied with that. We want to make sure that nobody else gets displaced by bad planning. And we want community input in these processes that are much stronger, including progress reports and planning impacts. So that's who I am, and that's kind of what the groups I run with. And then what was the second question? It was about what do we do now?
What can we actually do? What do you need us to do?
Yeah, so that's where I was gonna end up on. So I wanted to share the screen one last time because where is it? Presentation. Is that up there?
Yeah, and Keith has his hand up.
Okay.
And I'm gonna wait till after he's finished. I can hold my question if you prefer me to.
Okay.
I just want to make it clear that the lawsuit is not necessarily about stopping any projects or anything like that. I mean, there are a lot of things underway that this will not affect, such as Fletcher Johnson. But I think the point of this is it's a political battle here for the future of the city, right? Do we want planning to happen, or do we want just kind of these fiefdoms happening in the council levels where people can just change maps and affect, like in Adams Morgan where I live? I mean, Brienne Nadeau was last minute. All of the major corridors in Adams Morgan were upzoned without any community dialogue. Okay? There was one meeting she went to at a PZ planning zoning meeting at my ANC with 20 people at. Our ward consists of 15,000 people. I mean, our neighborhood. They don't know that the entire neighborhood's been upzoned.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is what we're talking about. It's like, well, what does planning really mean? And by the way, it's not just our perspective, it's in the law. And by the way, the core report, the Council Office on Racial Equity, said these planning processes have failed, particularly Black residents of the District of Columbia, and it will perpetuate the status quo. And we know what the status quo has been, massive displacement. So let me just share, just in a little bit of time left, where is it? What I wanted to end on, and that was this lawsuit. I don't know if people can see this. So the basic, is this, Graylin, is this coming up on your screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Summary of the case.
Yep. So the idea is to fight displacement, ensure the changes. This upflumbing of 200 million square feet, as we've been seeing in the maps, conservatively represents $85 billion in land value and air rights that can just be given away. And we want to know.
That's current value. That's
$85 billion in current value.
Okay.
Yep. $500 a square foot. It's actually about closer to 100 billion.
He said billion with a B.
Yeah.
Yes.
85 billion. And so
that's a lot of money.
Yeah. And so part of this talk, we've heard is like the mayor pointing at Ward 3 saying, oh, it's this segregated, exclusive white community. They need to do their fair share. But then when people push for affordable housing up there, she says it's too expensive to build affordable housing up there. Well, if that's the case, then their land value and air rights being given away, for example, up in Chevy Chase, probably the most expensive air rights and the most valuable air rights in the city, a portion of that must be redistributed to areas of the city that have been disinvested in. So Ward 3's upzoning can actually benefit and help Ward 5, 7, and 8. Get rid of we can fund the grocery stores. We can fund the libraries. We can fund the things that they say they never have money for. and we're running out of public land to do that with. And so what we got left are these air rights, and all this upzoning just given away with the stroke of a pen without planning, and it represents a significant amount of money that can and must be redistributed. That's kind of a key point of this. And of course, hello, let's plan when we're doing planning, right? We want to have planning impact studies done. So the summary of the case is right now, 12 people have already submitted an initial complaint, and that could be amended to bring on more plaintiffs and lawyers and evidence. But bottom line is, we're suing the mayor. And again, this is kind of symbolic, of course, but basically we're suing the mayor, we're suing the Office of Planning and the council about their 1,500 pages of changes and 200 million square feet of upzoning. And we are doing that. What are we asking the court to do? We're asking the court to grant declaratory judgment in favor of the plaintiffs to enjoin this bill from being passed into law and implemented until exhaustive and transparent impact studies are completed and published and made available for our comment, our review, and for the council to review before they start making these changes. And that the ANCs who did weigh in on the record before these changes have been made to say, hey, what about the law of progress reports? What about the law that's supposed to look at impacts on our constituents? We want those ANCs listened to. ANCs were created out of the Home Rule Act for a purpose, not to be ignored, but to be considered. Here, in this comp plan stuff, they were considered in part, unless it was about these controversial issues, if you want to consider that, of, hey, where are the planning impact studies? The ANCs asked for that, they didn't get it. And so your ANC might have been one of those that did that. And so that would give you standing. So how can you be part of this lawsuit? What are you committing to? Basically, you're signing two documents, the complaint itself and then a personal statement about where you live and how you might be harmed by the upzoning you see in those maps. There will probably be a Zoom call that you'd have to be on with the court just to acknowledge that you did sign on to the complaint, and you attest that before a judge. But otherwise, you're not going to be arguing the case. And there's not any costs or fees associated with this case other than some filing fees, which have already been covered. And so since this case is not about money or assets, there's not going to be any lawyer fees. There's no money involved here. We're asking the court to prevent harm on our communities by demanding the city follow the law. Will there be lawyers helping? Yes, we're working with lawyers. We're asking them to come on our behalf. Until then, I'm helping kind of shepherd this through. And some lawyers that you might know, Laura Richards is in Ward 7. And there's a few others that have been around in DC that I've known for a while. And we're meeting weekly on this. So what are the deadlines? We did the initial complaint on May 18th. And the court has docketed our case. And then we'll have a chance now to amend that in the next, I think, 3 weeks we have. So there's not a lot of time to come on board, but there is time. And so, again, what that means is reading the complaint, agreeing to it, signing on to that, and then creating your own personal statement for the area where you're seeing where there will be likely change. And then there'll be a virtual trial to hear the evidence, and the attorneys will battle it out in court. And then hopefully what we'll see is the court say, hey, City Council, Mayor Bowser, you didn't really do any planning studies. You want to upzone all these communities. We've seen what the upzoning has done over the last 15 years in terms of displacement. There's also other real issues. There's traffic, there's the environment, there's people's well-being. How about overcrowding of the schools? Really good, let's talk brass tacks. Union Market have people been over to Union Market? 20 new projects, 6,000 new residential units, 1,000 new hotel rooms. Out of those 6,000 new residential units, guess how many units were brokered by the Office of Planning to be affordable for families. You could count them on two hands. 10 units out of 6,000 new units would be affordable for families. So who do you think is going to live in Union Market? And by the way, was there any discussion around, do we have any parks, libraries? I mean, 6,000 new units. No discussion around parks, no discussion around libraries, no discussion around clinics. I mean, this is not planning. And so that's the main thrust of this complaint is like, we want, if you're going to do these changes, we want to see changes done in a way that consider the existing neighbors and consider like real community needs as we grow. We can't just grow and take a gamble with it, right? I mean, it's just not, that's not sustainable. And you can see that with all the pipes and everything they're ripping up now for all the new buildings in the streets and all the construction. It's very real, the impacts on many people. And the displacement, let's not even get started there. I mean, we all know it's a form of economic violence. It's a violent upheaval of many communities. And I've lived through it in Adams Morgan. I've seen it. And it's not fair. So we believe the law is on our side. I'd be glad to share the complaint with you, the draft complaint. And what you want to do is you want to read it. You want to look at those maps and you want to see who else, you want to see if you can join. You want to see if your neighbors can join. And then we can talk about that and prepare statements. And I have my info here. You can see, you all see that on the screen. So the email is dc4reality@gmail.com, or you can call me at 202-810-2768. I'd be glad to share the complaint with you and share what next steps we need to do. And I'd be glad to walk through those maps again with you if you're having trouble with it.
Okay, we have a couple of hands up. Keith and then Deborah.
Thank you again, Graylin. So Chris, again, I think the work that you guys are doing is great. I especially love hearing that somebody from Ward 1, from other communities that are not east of the river, are trying to make sure that affordable housing is equitably distributed throughout the District of Columbia. So kudos to you. Again, as the chair of the Fletcher Johnson Task Force, I would just be remiss if I did not state that that our community is fine with the changes that are currently in the plan. It took our community 3 years to get to this point. We assembled all of the ANCs across Ward 7, all of the civic association leaders. We've been meeting for 3 years. We sat down, we wrote those amendments that you see in those plans. Those amendments that came for the Ward 7 area in particular, they were not designed by developers. And I just want to state that. I know that happens a lot throughout the city. Developers write those things. Those things was written from us. We've got our council member on board and everything. We've even done advocacy effective enough where the Fletcher Johnson Task Force is actually mentioned in the comprehensive plan. I just can't stress enough that what we have in Ward 7 is what we want, especially on the Benning Road corridor. So we appreciate the efforts that your organization is doing, but if you guys are trying to say that what we're trying to do for the Fletcher Johnson development, you're going to really hurt us. And we really want to be a united front in the district so we can start to see some more economic prosperity while also keeping members of the community that's been here in their home so they can age in place, and also provide an opportunity for residents who don't have a lot of income to become homeowners as well. So please, when you guys are doing your advocacy issues and you're talking about issues in particular as it relates to Fletcher Johnson or around the Benning Road corridor, please make sure that you're using language that doesn't insinuate that the community has not been involved in this process. This has been a community-driven process that's been in the works for 3 years plus. And thank you again for that presentation.
Keith, help me understand something. There's this, so were you all active in developing the small area plan for that area?
So unfortunately, the Marshall Heights community or the Benning Road community, Benning Ridge community, we do not currently have a small area plan.
Oh, okay.
But the language in which that we have in the comprehensive plan would afford us an opportunity to work with the Office of Planning to get a small area plan that will be compartmentalized with the Benning Road corridor plan. And we're definitely in the works and discussions to make that happen at this point.
I understand. Thank you. Okay. Deborah.
Yes, hi. I live in Ward 1 next to a large public property, which has a fire station and a police station on it. And it is one of the properties that Chris mentioned that was upflummed without any public input. In fact, our councilwoman, Brianne Nadeau, I would say, in my opinion, deliberately tried to evade public input. She had a meeting, as Chris said, not even with the full ANC, just with a committee within the ANC, and specifically asked the ANC not to vote on this and only to just, give them time to do the presentation so they could check the box. So I had a call with Brianne Nadeau, and I objected to the fact that they're doing this without any environmental assessment or any public input as required by law. And what I'm worried about, and I appreciate Keith's comments, but unfortunately, Keith's situation does not apply to us or to a lot of other communities where some members of the council are deliberately trying to avoid engaging the public because they have a vision. They have a vision that they want to enact. And somebody that knows Brianne Nadeau told me, well, she has a vision for Ward 1 and she knows what she wants for that public property. So she doesn't want to get into, long protracted arguments with the community. And I said, that's what an authoritarian does. That's what a dictator does. So I'm just here to back up Chris to tell you about Ward 1. This is public land. This involves all of us, not just Ward 1 residents, but everyone in the city owns a piece of this land and should have a say with how it's developed. And I also want to flag the danger of this, because if you start having council people making planning decisions and not engaging us because they don't want to be bothered by, engaging with the public, you end up getting into this authoritarian sort of thing with our city. And I don't think any of us on this call wants that. So that's just kind of the larger slippery slope of this. And I commend Chris for bringing this lawsuit. And I encourage everybody who's, concerned to get engaged with it. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Chris, as public land, I mean, we're talking about a fire station and a police station. That's not likely to be sold to speculators, or am I misguided here?
I think we could look to the West End Library and Firehouse as the go-to example from a few years ago, where the library, police station over at 21st and L were given to a developer at the cost of the price of what it would take to rebuild the library. So for $10 million for these two public parcels, like 3 blocks from the White House. And that was given to a developer. And if you look above the library now, it's $2 million condos. Our vice president was living there for a little while. And so there's like 150 of these $2 million condos. To me, it's always, again, the specifics. What I'm worried about is planning overall, right? Yeah. And I wanted to ask Mr. Hassan Tari, because I need to make sure I'm checking myself as well. The thrust of this lawsuit is for the areas of the city where this upflumming is happening without planning in place. And what I'm hearing from Mr. Hassan Tari is that we've had lots of community input I don't know if you saw environmental impact studies or impact studies that were required with some of the upplumbing. I'd love to get clarity on that. But I just want to get clarity on the geographics of when you say we're in full support. Is that for the Fletcher Johnson property? Is it for all of Benning Road, all the way down to Maryland Avenue? So Benning Road at Minnesota. You know, you made it seem like all of Ward 7 is on board, and you know, we had thorough discussions and there's impact studies and all of this. I need to get clarity on that, if I could, so I can understand it when I'm reaching out to Ward 7 friends and communities.
Sure, Chris. So, and to kind of answer your question with that, and I'm going to text you after this too, so we can even have a conversation offline, and we can actually have, you know, some one-on-one time to talk about it. But when I do talk about where we're all in agreement is for the Fletcher Johnson piece. So the part of the Benning Road corridor, that part of which I guess technically sort of a small area plan. The part of the corridor, I believe they call it 2B, and down, that extends from the Benning Road Metro Station to the Fletcher Johnson campus. That's the part where we have a consensus in Ward 7 for what we would like to see there. And like, again, right now, so we can talk whenever you have some time, but yes.
That's helpful, man. Thank you so much.
Sharon Shanklin Brown, your hands up.
It is. I just wanted to say that Keith failed to tell, for those that didn't know, he's also president of the Marshall Heights Civic Association. And I, as well as I believe Melissa Freeze is on from River Terrace, we are also a part of that Fletcher Johnson Task Force. Melissa's president of River Terrace and I president of the Benning Ridge. So as Keith said, we've been working in tandem together, those of us that probably would be affected. He's on one side of Benning Road, Benning Ridge is on the other, and River Terrace is just on the other side of the Rain Whitlock Bridge. So, but the main thing is I just wanted everybody to know it's not just that he's the chair of Fletcher Johnson, but he is also, so he has a great interest in what's going on and what's being developed as president of the Marshall Heights Civic Association.
All right, thank you. Any other questions before we move on?
I do. I just
Yes.
wanted to ask Chris to speak to 2 points. One is that when you talked about giving away or selling libraries and firehouses and public properties, if he could confirm that a lot of times properties are given away virtually to developers. Like I recall 2 tracts of land in Anacostia for $10. And if he could speak to the history of developers honoring community benefit agreements that they reach with the community. Could you speak to those 2 points?
Yeah, those are good questions. I think in the context of this, yeah, community benefits agreements are important because they are how the community sets kind of the standards they want to see happen with development. And whether those are enforced or not is really up to that community right now. There's not a mechanism in the city to keep track and see if those actually happen. So it's a weak point in the negotiation process with developers, is that they'll say yes, 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 and sign off, and the zoning commission will approve. But whether that ever gets enforced or not is a different story. And we do need help from the Office of Planning on that to track that stuff, but they're not doing it yet. We won some language in the comp plan that discusses that, so that's a victory for us. The other idea of giving away land, I mean, again, in context of some of the concerns around planning, you know, look at the wharf, right? Those were all, I mean, I'm sure people have gone dancing at Zanzibar back in the day, and you know, maybe went to the seafood place next door. I mean, all all those parcels were purchased by the city through eminent domain to the tune of, I think, close to $50 million. That was then turned around for $1 to P.N. Hoffman to build the wharf. And then the city threw another $300 million to do the infrastructure. Now, what did we get out of that? And this is the same with all these other areas that have been upflummed and upzoned over the last 15 years. And this is why we do have worry. We should have worry along the Benning Road corridor and in Ward 8 and in 5 and even in other parts, right? So, but where people are vulnerable to displacement, what happens is you see the Navy Yard, where, I mean, complete flip in demographics, Southwest DC, the wharf. I mean, there's a real wealth and income equity gap that the stuff that's being built cannot be afforded by most people who live here now. And it's being funded and subsidized by public money and land. And so what we have is situations where when that type of stuff gets built around the wharf or a Navy Yard, a Union Market, the communities that are in the surrounding areas are destabilized. The speculation goes up, the land values go up, the appraisers, tax appraisers start coming around and say your house is now worth this much. You may not want to move, but now your tax bill is twice as big, right? Even with the homestead deduction. So there's something to be said about when the law requires planning and impact study, that displacement is part of that. The stabilization of communities now who have lived in certain sized density, price density communities for the last 20 years, 40 years, suddenly now get this boost, literally with the stroke of a pen on a map. That it shifts the speculation, the capital that's flowing into the city from foreign investment and big mega real estate companies, it bowls over our communities. So when we're talking about planning, we want to ensure that we can do the things we want to see happen in these communities with development, but do it in a way that won't lead to the massive destabilization and displacement of existing places, right? I think that's the thrust we're trying to get at here. And unfortunately, what the city does is it throws money at these big luxury projects. It gives away land to these big luxury projects, which then go to destabilize communities and really pull in the speculators to push people out in one form or another. So I don't know if that's helpful, but I think the point is that we want to put our flag up and say, well, you want to do all this upzoning, which is going to lead to all this speculation. Can you consider us, the existing neighbors, before you do that? And by the way, the law says that. And I don't know how real that's been in some of these discussions, but I think we're going to force that issue for the communities who feel like they haven't been as lucky as those around in Ward 7 and other places. You know, there are parts of the city that didn't get any attention to this, but are being changed dramatically, right? And so I think that's who we want to focus in on to bring in and say, it's time to help the communities who've been left out to be part of their future as part of their self-determination in their own communities.
We have a hand raised. Melissa Freeze.
Oh, hi. Sorry, I don't have a camera on here. I just wanted to kind of chime in on all this. And Kiva, I think hearing from you, you feel like you might be getting attacked, or what you've written has been attacked. And Chris and I we talked about this particular lawsuit, and in just a month and a half ago, we were talking about it. And we talked through the same thing. And I told him, well, River Terrace, they're not being upzoned. We're perfectly fine and everything. But I do agree with the lawsuit because if you've been in this city for longer than 15 years, you've seen incredible things like First Street Northeast. First Street Northeast was all PDR, was all warehouses and things like that. Now you've got a Harris Teeter there, but again, there's no affordable housing truly on First Street Northeast, and that land was basically kind of given away in all those years. And a lot of areas have been like Chris said, Southwest. You know, the whole waterfront, Navy Yard. That land was all, again, PDR. It was all warehouses. And now you go over there and we're not there. I'm just going to be honest about it. We're not there. There are not Black people there. I work at St. Vincent de Paul Church. We're not there. And the problem is when we let these things occur, it hurts us over in Ward 7 also, because all of a sudden they're starting to say, we need affordable housing. Well, you and I know we need mixed income housing in Ward 7. We don't necessarily need 30 and below. We need some of those 50s and 60s and even 80s in Ward 7, because that's how we get our supermarkets. That's how we get our retail, which we don't have. And they start shoving it up. So we've got to make sure that areas that are having a struggle and are fighting are being given a chance, so that it doesn't come back and bite us in the butt. Because I've been saying this for 3 years, that Ward 7 is the last frontier. We are the last area with lots of green space. Ward 8's the same way, lots of land that is either PDR or city owned.
What is, excuse me, Melissa, what is PDR?
PDR is basically a warehouse. So it's production. Oh gosh, I can't remember basically it's warehouse land. So it's warehouse land. So like I said, remember First Street Northeast back there where the old Hex building used to be and everything? And
so it's like light industrial.
Yes, exactly.
The old ice house, Union Ice House or whatever it was called. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
You know, even where they were talking about putting the re-entry center back behind Binning Road, that would be considered PDR. That would be considered, because it was just warehouses and meat packing plants it used to be and things like that. And like I said, Ward 7 and 8 have some of the last of those large tracts of land. And again, Ward 7 and 8 kind of need a little bit of a push in the income level, not necessarily too high, but a little push. And if they just go and up from, you know, a lot of places, or up zone a lot of places, there's a chance that we won't be able to utilize what we kind of need. So we've got to fight for everybody to ensure that the entire city is equitable and works out that way. So that's my.
Yeah. And you're right about attracting like grocery stores and that sort of thing. Those income levels make a big difference when when those chains are looking for places to settle.
Investors.
Yeah.
They look at a mile radius for income, and then although we keep saying the family median income or the area median income, they look at the incomes from that particular community within a mile radius. So we definitely do need that.
We had that whole thing of the mayor talking about 36,000 affordable units she needs. And then on the other side, she's saying that Ward 3 is too expensive to sell, to do that type of land. Ward 2 and 3, it's too expensive. So where are they going to go with those 36,000 units? Where are they going to go? They're going to come over here to us, and we're already in food desert, retail desert, education desert, employment desert as it is. And so it's easy. I mean, it'd be easy to throw 36 units over here. Again, go down 295 and get rid of the Cube Place, the gas stations, etc. You could have 5-story buildings going all the way up 295.
Yep.
Well, we're already experiencing that with Core and that property behind off of Minnesota Avenue and 7F. That's a big issue right now. So just in Keith's defense, I agree with what you're saying, Melissa, because we know where all the deserts are and depleted areas, but I think he was just mainly thinking of the corridor that was included in the comprehensive plan as it went up by Fletcher Johnson. But certainly there is need for improvement and all. Now, Chris, I heard you say you wanted written statements as it pertains to your particular area. Am I right?
Yeah, I think if we want to show the court how, you know, you have particularly injury from the lack of planning of the upzoning in your neighborhood, what, you know, how close you are to the upzoning, and how it affects you if you're on a fixed income, or, you know, if you have, you know, if you have kids, or there's, you know, we could talk about those personal statements and what the court might be looking for, because you got to distinguish yourself from the general public, right? If the court thinks, well, oh, well, you're going to get affected like everybody else, then there's not much of a case. But if there's specific, that's why we want to find plaintiffs who have, you know, specific concerns. I mean, our elders, right, or families, or people who have ailments like that are. I mean, there's going to be massive pollution and issues with the construction. If all this goes at almost the same time, it's a very real issue for a lot of people. The noise and the construction is real, and that's what we mean by planning, right? Like, is this just going to be a crapshoot? Right? I mean, when is all this stuff going to unfold, and how do people be prepared for it? And by the way, how are people compensated? I think it's another big issue. We've not been compensated. People have not been compensated for being displaced or for all of the construction that's happening to benefit really a small amount of hands. And I think that's a very real question for us as a city. You know, it's not just about tax dollars, right? It's about people who live here now as well, and how are they affected by all of this. But yeah, the bottom line is we do want personal statements, and I'm willing to work with folks and with attorneys to help us get those from the potential plaintiffs. I put my info in the chat. I hope you all saw that.
Should there be a public advocate for land use similar to like the Office of the People's Counsel when it comes to utilities? I don't know. Is that far-fetched idea?
No, that's a great idea. I mean, has to be random people otherwise, like me. I mean, I know some folks on this call, but wouldn't it be nice if there was an office of looking out for the people? You know, because a lot of folks just don't know how to engage with zoning and planning. It's a jargon issue. I mean, or they're working two jobs, or, you know what I'm saying? It's not. Yeah, we do need an advocate.
A public advocate. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So any other questions, comments, concerns anyone like to raise before we close out? It's about 9:15. This has been very enlightening.
Yes, it certainly has.
Yes. I really appreciate this, Chris. Yeah.
Braylon, can we do something where if I write something up, you can, I guess, blast it out to the attendees here?
Sure. Okay. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do a follow-up so that way they have all the documents and the links and all of that.
Yeah, so anyone who's not a DC Federation of Civic Association delegate, please, you can put your email address in the chat or reach out to a delegate that you're aware of from your neighborhood association, because when I blast it, that's where it's going to. But if I see your email address in the chat, then I'll make sure to include you. That's all for me. Anybody have anything before we close out?
No, Mr. President, I would just like to say that this has been very educational to all of those who attended the meeting tonight. Yeah. And we thank Chris for a great presentation.
Yes.
An honor to be here, Dr. Gaffney, and Braylon, thank you for inviting me.
Yes, yes, Miss Diggs, were you?
I was going to say, Member Thompson, thank you for making that astute comment about affordable housing. I don't understand what that got up off the floor when
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Maybe it
I
might.
couldn't hear her either.
Okay, if you get closer to your mic, maybe we can hear you more clearly. I don't know. Okay, sorry about that. We can't hear you. I don't know what's going on. Sorry. Anyone else before we close? All right. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for attending tonight. Again, if you're not a Federation delegate, and you can, please include your email address in the chat, and I can make sure that whatever is sent to me by Chris to disseminate, that you also receive it.
Graylin, can I ask before we close out? I noticed there's a recording light up on my screen.
Yes.
Will we be able to share this video later on? Like, does this go up on YouTube or something like that?
It does not go up on YouTube. It is approximately 2 hours. It is a massive file. The audio file is much smaller. I could probably Dropbox it to you.
That'd be great.
And then you can do what you will. Yeah, I haven't had the best of luck in dealing with the big video files.
I got it. Yeah, if you could Dropbox the video, I'll cut the presentation part out, like especially on the maps.
Okay, sure.
I can make that available.
All right, this is the last call for any comments, final questions, anything?
I hope everyone has taken their shots. Both.
Yes, please get vaccinated.
If you need a presentation from Homeland Security, get in contact with Graylin.
Yes. That'll work. I can refer you to the right people. Yeah. All right. If there's nothing else, we're going to close out. Thank you all for coming. May the grace of God be with you until we meet again. Good night.
Bye.
Night.
Good night.
Bye.